Welcome to the Greg's Review Show. Today we're going to get into a very, very important topic today. Thumbs up. Please like and share this video. Please support us through Cash App. That's GRC $mantrap. All greatly donations will be greatly appreciated. Without further ado, we're going to get into this weird video. So here we go. Let's get into it right now.
What if the person you loved the most held a secret that could shatter your world? In this story, we dive into a chilling case that reveals the horrifying reality of a husband who uncovers a shocking truth about his wife, leading to a brutal and grisly murder. In the vibrant city of Houston, Texas, lived a couple who seemed to embody the perfect love story. Their names were David Carter and Maya Johnson. To outsiders, they were a picture-perfect couple, the kind that friends admired and strangers envied. David, a tall and muscular man with a rugged, charming smile, was a hard-working construction worker deeply rooted in his family and community. Raised in a conservative household, he held traditional values close to his heart, particularly when it came to marriage. He was known for his dedication and selflessness, often putting others' needs before his own. David was the kind of man his friends joked would take care of everyone before even thinking about himself. Maya was stunningly beautiful, with a warm brown complexion and captivating dark eyes that seemed to sparkle with life. She worked as a hairstylist and was making a name for herself in the local beauty scene. People were drawn to her infectious smile and charisma, but it was her warmth that truly set her apart. Maya had a unique way of making everyone feel special, and it wasn't long before David found himself irresistibly attracted to her. Their courtship was swift but intense, with friends and family surprised at how quickly things progressed between them. Within a few months of their first meeting at a community event organized by their local church, David proudly began bringing Maya to family gatherings, showcasing her as the one he intended to build a life with. The chemistry between them was palpable, and it wasn't long before David proposed to Maya, who accepted with tears of joy in her eyes. Their wedding day was nothing short of a fairy tale, held in the grand historic Houston Baptist Church, attended by over 200 guests. As David stood at the altar, his heart raced with excitement and love as he watched Maya glide down the aisle in a shimmering white gown, looking like a goddess. Even amidst the joy, however, there were subtle hints of unease that David brushed aside, attributing them to typical wedding day nerves. Maya seemed lost in thought at times, her gaze drifting away as if she were wrestling with something deep within. When they exchanged vows, David noticed her hands trembling slightly. He tried to dismiss it, believing it to be common anxiety on such a significant day. They embarked on a luxurious honeymoon in the Caribbean, filled with sun, sand, and endless romance. But even in paradise, David sensed Maya holding back. She would occasionally withdraw, her laughter fading into silence, her eyes clouded with an unspoken worry. After their honeymoon, David and Maya settled into a cozy home in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of Houston, seeking the privacy they craved as newlyweds. David poured his energy into home improvement projects, fixing up the yard and creating a comfortable space for them. Meanwhile, Maya focused on building her beauty business, and they both envisioned a future filled with love and success. However, as weeks turned into months, David noticed subtle changes in Maya's behavior. She became increasingly secretive, often locking her phone whenever he was around, and disappearing for hours without explanation. At first, he thought she was simply busy with work, but when he dropped by her salon to surprise her, he often found it empty. Maya's excuses about late meetings with friends he had never heard of began to pile up, and David's gut feeling told him something was wrong. Despite his growing suspicions, David didn't want to believe that Maya was hiding something from him. He loved her deeply, and the thought of betrayal felt like a knife twisting in his gut. He convinced himself that he was overthinking things, that the natural stresses of married life were catching up to them, and that no relationship was perfect. But as tension mounted, intimacy between them became less frequent, and when it did happen, it felt strained. Maya often turned away, avoiding eye contact, and her demeanor hinted that she was on the verge of revealing something significant. It wasn't until one fateful night that everything unraveled. David had always respected Maya's privacy, but his growing doubts drove him to do something he never thought he would. He decided to search through her belongings while she was out with friends. As he rummaged through her drawers, he stumbled upon a small box hidden in the back of the closet, buried under piles of old clothes. Inside, he discovered documents that made his blood run cold, including a birth certificate bearing a name he had never seen before, Elijah Johnson. Confused and terrified, David dug deeper and unearthed medical records detailing Maya's transition from male to female. The weight of the revelation crashed down on him like a tidal wave, stealing the breath from his lungs. The woman he had married, the woman he had vowed to love and cherish, had kept this monumental truth from him. In that moment, he felt as if his entire world had been turned upside down. David's mind raced with conflicting emotions: anger, confusion, heartbreak, each one twisting his insides like a vice. How could Maya have hidden something so fundamental about herself? The person he thought he knew felt like a complete stranger. Hours passed in a blur of disbelief as he sat alone in their home, surrounded by the quiet ticking of the clock on the wall, amplifying his growing rage and sense of betrayal. When Maya finally returned home that evening, she was met with the sight of David sitting on the edge of their bed, the documents spread out before him like evidence of a crime. The moment her eyes fell on the papers, her face drained of color. She froze in the doorway, her hand tightening around the doorknob as if she were preparing to escape. "You lied to me." David's voice was barely a whisper, trembling with rage. He stood slowly, holding the papers aloft like a trophy of betrayal. "Who are you?" Maya's heart sank as the reality of the situation crashed down upon her. She had always known this day might come, the day when her past would catch up with her, but she never imagined it would happen like this. "David, please. I was going to tell you. I swear I was, but I didn't know how. I love you. This doesn't change who I am or who we are," she pleaded, stepping cautiously toward him, tears welling in her eyes. Yet her words only fueled the fire within David. "It doesn't change who you are? You've been lying to me this whole time." His voice grew louder, more frantic, as if he were struggling to comprehend the magnitude of the betrayal. "You tricked me into marrying you. Do you know what you've done? I gave you everything: my love, my loyalty, my life, and this whole time you've been lying to me about the most basic thing." Maya's tears streamed down her face as she desperately tried to explain herself. "I didn't tell you because I was afraid of losing you. You mean everything to me. I thought if you knew, you wouldn't love me anymore." David's face twisted in fury. "You thought right," he spat, his anger spiraling out of control, a whirlwind of emotions that he could no longer contain. The room felt like it was closing in on him, the once beloved wife now transformed into a complete stranger in his eyes. The argument escalated, each passing moment intensifying the conflict. Maya stood helpless, trapped between her desire to explain herself and the fear of what David might do next. She had never seen him like this, so out of control, so full of rage. "David, please just calm down. We can talk about this. I'll answer any questions you have. Just please don't do anything rash." But David was no longer listening. All he could see was red, the betrayal burning through him like an uncontrollable fire. In a blind moment of rage, he stormed into the garage, his eyes landing on a hammer. Without hesitation, he grabbed it, returning to the house with chilling determination. Maya stood frozen in the bedroom, her heart pounding in her chest as she saw the hammer in David's hand. In a burst of uncontrollable fury, David swung the hammer down with brutal force. Maya screamed, trying to shield herself from the impending attack, but David was relentless. Blow after blow, he struck her with terrifying violence, her cries for mercy drowned out by the sound of the hammer hitting flesh. The walls of their home quickly became splattered with blood, the brutality of the assault escalating beyond comprehension. As the horror unfolded, David's mind spiraled deeper into madness. He dragged Maya's lifeless body into the bathroom, his grip on reality slipping away as he grabbed a knife from the kitchen drawer. The rage had completely consumed him, any sense of humanity erased as he began to mutilate her body, slashing and cutting with reckless abandon. By the time the authorities arrived, Maya's body was barely recognizable, her face and form marred by David's unhinged brutality. Blood soaked the walls and floor, and in the middle of the room sat David, covered in blood, staring blankly at the devastation he had unleashed. His expression was one of haunting disbelief, as if he couldn't fully comprehend the horror he had just created. In a daze, David grabbed his phone, hands trembling as he dialed for help. I killed her," he whispered to the operator, his voice hollow and devoid of emotion. The operator tried to keep him on the line, asking for details, but David could hardly form coherent thoughts. All he knew was that his life had spiraled into a dark abyss from which there was no return. When the police arrived, they found David sitting on the floor beside Maya's lifeless, mutilated body, his face stained with tears, his hands still covered in her blood. The man who had once been a proud, hard-working husband was now reduced to a broken shell, consumed by the weight of his actions. The news of Maya's death sent shockwaves through their tight-knit Houston community as the media picked up the story, revealing the gruesome details of her murder and the secret that had led to such violence. As the story unfolded, it sparked a nationwide debate. Some painted David as a man who had been betrayed, while others condemned his actions as nothing short of monstrous. The media frenzy only intensified the scrutiny on both David and Maya. What had started as a secret kept out of fear had ended in an unimaginable tragedy. The detectives who responded to the scene were seasoned professionals, but nothing could prepare them for the horror they encountered that day. Maya's mutilated body lay in a pool of blood, the once pristine walls of the home transformed into a grotesque canvas of violence. The house, which had once symbolized love and a hopeful future, was now forever stained by death and betrayal. At the police station, David found himself sitting in an interrogation room, his blood-stained clothes replaced by a simple white jumpsuit. Yet no matter how much he was cleaned up, the horror of that day lingered on his skin, a constant reminder of what he had done. Hours passed as detectives tried to piece together the events that had led to such unimaginable brutality. "Why did you do it, David?" one detective asked, his voice steady but probing. He sought to find a crack in the wall of silence that David had built around himself. For the first time since his arrest, David looked up, his eyes hollow and haunted, filled with a mixture of sorrow and disbelief. "I didn't know," he mumbled, his voice barely audible. "I loved her, and she lied to me. She wasn't who she said she was." The detective leaned forward, his tone becoming more insistent. "So you decided to beat her to death and then mutilate her? Do you realize what you've done?" David's gaze dropped again, and he remained silent, as if the weight of his actions was too much to bear. It became clear that something had snapped within him, a fragile mind pushed to the breaking point by a combination of betrayal, rage, and deep-seated insecurities. The brutal crime made headlines across the nation, not only because of its shocking violence, but also due to the controversy surrounding Maya's past. The revelation that she had been a transgender woman sent shockwaves through the media, igniting debates on gender identity, secrecy, and the limits of trust in relationships. As the trial date approached, David's legal team prepared a defense centered on emotional distress, attempting to portray him as a man who had been so deeply betrayed that he lost control in a moment of madness. They argued that David had been pushed to the brink by the shock of discovering Maya's secret and the emotional toll it took on him. On the other hand, the prosecution painted a very different picture. They presented David as a cold-blooded killer who had brutally murdered his wife in a savage rage. Maya's character came under scrutiny, her private life becoming fodder for the tabloids. Yet the focus remained on David, whose actions that fateful day would be dissected and analyzed in court. Witnesses were called to testify, friends and neighbors describing David and Maya as a happy couple. However, some noted that David had always seemed a bit controlling, a hint of darkness lurking beneath the surface of their seemingly perfect life. As the trial progressed, the courtroom became a theater of emotion, with graphic photos of the crime scene presented to the jury. The images of blood-splattered walls and Maya's mutilated body left the jury in shocked silence. One of the most gut-wrenching moments came when Maya's mother took the stand, her face etched with grief. She recounted how much her daughter had loved David and how she had always worried about revealing the truth to him. Her words hung in the courtroom like a heavy cloud, a poignant reminder of a life cut short. After weeks of testimony, closing arguments, and emotional pleas from both sides, the jury returned with their verdict: guilty of first-degree murder. David showed little reaction as the sentence was read, his face a blank mask of resignation. He had gone from a newlywed husband with a promising future to a convicted murderer. As he was led from the courtroom, David glanced up at the gallery where Maya's family sat, their eyes filled with pain and loss. It was clear that no amount of justice could ever bring her back or undo the damage that had been done. Even after the trial, the case continued to stir debates online, racking up millions of views as documentaries and clips circulated. The story of Maya's life and tragic death resonated with many, igniting discussions around the treatment of transgender individuals and the violence they often face. Supporters of Maya created a viral hashtag, Justice for Maya, calling for greater protection and rights for transgender people. The house where Maya had been murdered eventually went up for sale, but neighbors noted that it never felt the same. The horrific events had left a permanent scar on the community, one that would take years to heal. People whispered about the tragedy in hushed tones, the memory of that fateful night lingering in the air like a dark cloud. Meanwhile, David's family struggled to come to terms with the horrifying crime. Some members expressed disbelief, claiming they never truly knew the man capable of such violence. The case not only shattered the lives of those directly involved, but also sent ripples through the community, forcing everyone to confront uncomfortable truths about identity, trust, and the fragility of human relationships. This story is not just about murder. It serves as a powerful reminder of how deep-seated fears and societal pressures can tear lives apart in the most brutal of ways. David's uncontrollable rage stands as a chilling reminder of the dangers that arise when identity, trust, and masculinity collide tragically. In the end, the tragedy of David and Maya serves as a poignant lesson about the
As you can see in this story, it's a very tragic situation. Had Maya, the transgender, been up front with David, it probably wouldn't have ever happened. So I'm just saying is be truthfully who you are. That's what you are. Be truthfully to that person. That person has the right to know who you are and what you stand for and what you're all about. Be truthful who you are. If God created you that way, or you are a male, you're a male. If you're a female, you're a female. Don't be out here deceiving people and saying that you're another gender and you're not. God is not mocked. Whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he reap. God bless you. Thank you for tuning in to Greg's Review Show. Thumbs up, like, and share this video. And the Lord say the same. I'll see you next week with a wonderful, wonderful topic. Take care.